beyond your screen lies a world of untold fears. Welcome back to Void of Fears. I've set a goal to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of April, and we're getting closer every day. Your support has been incredible on this journey. Every like, comment, and subscription truly helps push these videos to new viewers who might enjoy these stories as much as you do. The YouTube algorithm notices when you engage, and it makes all the difference. If you're enjoying these nightmares, please consider subscribing. It would mean the world to me to hit this milestone together. Now, let's dive into the void where tonight's story awaits you. The first time I saw them, I was cleaning my rifle. Not standard issue. Nothing about our facility was standard. The weapon in my hands was a custom-built MK-20, modified with an experimental barrel that could deliver rounds with such precision that it made conventional sniper rifles look like toys. My name is James Cooper, and for 15 years I've been what the military politely calls a specialized marksman. In civilian terms, I'm a sniper, but one with a particular talent that made me valuable to this hidden research installation nestled in the Nevada mountains. Most marksmen train to hit what they aim at. I specialized in hitting what I wasn't aiming at, precision ricochet shooting. The ability to calculate how a bullet would bounce, skip, or deflect off surfaces became my signature skill. It started as a trick shot exhibition in my hometown, a way to impress girls at the county fair. Then a visiting military officer saw me bounce a .22 round off 7 different surfaces to ring a bell no one could hit directly. 6 months later, I was in specialized training. 15 years after that, I was here, at a place that didn't officially exist. Facility 87 sat carved into the side of a mountain, its entrance disguised as an abandoned mining operation. Below ground, it housed some of the brightest minds and deadliest operators in the nation. We worked on weapon systems so experimental they didn't have proper names yet, just alphanumeric designations that changed monthly for security reasons. My colleagues were an eclectic mix. Dr. Eliza Morgan headed our science division. Brilliant but socially awkward. She could explain the physics behind our experimental weapons, but struggled with small talk. Colonel Reynolds ran military operations. A hardened veteran of 3 wars who'd seen enough combat to know when to fight and when to think. Director Wilson oversaw everything with the cool efficiency of someone who'd worked in intelligence long enough to trust no one completely. Then there were my fellow operators. Davis, a former Delta Force member, with hands so steady he could thread a needle during an earthquake. Rodriguez, our communications specialist, who could hack anything with a circuit board. And Thompson, a demolitions expert who knew more ways to make things explode than anyone should. We were a family of sorts, bound by secrecy and purpose. Most days followed a routine. Training, testing, analysing, improving. Then came that Wednesday evening in late October when everything changed. I remember because Halloween decorations hung in the rec room, paper ghosts that seemed childish compared to what was coming. The facility allowed these small touches of normalcy to keep us grounded. I had just finished my daily maintenance routine, the familiar smell of gun oil hanging in the air, when the alarms began blaring. Not the fire drill tone or the security breach pattern, but something I'd never heard before. 3 long pulses followed by a short one, repeating with increasing urgency. "Cooper, command center, now." The voice belonged to Director Wilson, her usual composure noticeably fractured. I secured my rifle and ran. The command center buzzed with activity when I arrived. The massive underground room was normally a model of efficiency, but now technicians swarmed around monitoring equipment while officers huddled around the central display table. The wall of screens showed satellite imagery, radar readings, and data streams I couldn't interpret. 60 minutes ago, our deep space monitoring array detected an object entering our atmosphere, Wilson said as I approached. Her normally perfectly styled grey hair was coming loose from its bun, a telltale sign of hours of tension. It didn't burn up, It adjusted course multiple times, demonstrating controlled flight. It's landed approximately 20 miles from here. Colonel Reynolds, our military liaison, pointed to satellite imagery showing a strange silvery object nestled in a canyon. His weathered face betrayed no emotion, but the tension in his shoulders told me everything I needed to know. "We're assembling a reconnaissance team. You're on it, Cooper." "Why me?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "Because if whatever piloted that thing turns hostile, I want someone who can make impossible shots," he replied, his voice steady but grim. "Prep for extended reconnaissance. Full gear, experimental weapons included. Briefing in 20. The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. I retrieved my specialized kit, the modified rifle, custom ammunition, designed to fragment in specific ways, and the targeting system Dr. Morgan developed specifically for calculating ricochet trajectories. The gear weighed nearly 60 pounds, but I'd trained with it so long it felt like a part of me. The briefing was uncharacteristically brief. "We don't know what we're dealing with," Reynolds admitted to the assembled team. "This is beyond any first contact scenario we've trained for. Your mission is observation only. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary for survival. Record everything. The future of humanity may depend on what you learn today." Within 30 minutes, our team was geared up and moving out. Myself, Davis, and Rodriguez, and Dr. Morgan, whose excitement barely masked her fear. We took one of the facility's unmarked Humvees, modified for silent operation, and headed toward the coordinates. "What do you think it is?" Rodriguez asked as we navigated the rough terrain, his voice unusually subdued. "Smart money says experimental Russian or Chinese craft," Davis replied, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. Dr. Morgan shook her head, her eyes fixed on her tablet displaying the anomalous readings. "The energy signature doesn't match any known propulsion system. The radiation pattern is unlike anything in our databases." "You're saying aliens?" Rodriguez said flatly. Morgan looked up, her face pale in the dim light of the vehicle. "I'm saying prepare for anything." We approached the canyon at sunset, the sky bleeding red as we crested the ridge and got our first real look at the craft. Nothing in my 15 years of military service prepared me for that sight. The setting sun cast long shadows across the canyon, painting everything in shades of orange and deep purple, except for the object, which seemed to absorb and reflect light in ways that defied natural laws. The ship, if you could call it that, appeared almost liquid, its surface rippling like mercury despite being obviously solid. No visible seams or joints interrupted its seamless exterior, which reflected the crimson sky in distorted patterns. It was roughly the size of a commercial airliner, but shaped like nothing I'd ever seen. Somewhere between a manta ray and a teardrop, with what appeared to be sensory appendages extending from its forward section. "Are those tendrils?" Davis whispered, adjusting his binoculars. "Sensory organs, perhaps," Morgan replied, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. "Or maybe communication arrays." We settled into a hidden observation post, using the natural rock formations as cover. For 2 hours, nothing happened. The ship remained still, its surface occasionally rippling, as if responding to unseen stimuli. We documented everything, taking measurements, spectral readings, and hundreds of photos. "Movement," Davis whispered suddenly, pointing to an opening that had silently appeared in the craft's side. The section of hull simply melted away, forming a perfect oval entrance. They emerged, one by one. Tall, unnaturally thin figures with limbs that seemed to have too many joints. Their bodies stretched nearly 7 feet tall, but couldn't have weighed more than a human child. Their movements were deliberate, precise, with an unnerving fluidity that suggested either low-gravity origins or incredibly efficient musculature. Their skin, or what covered them, shifted colors slightly with each movement. adapting to their surroundings. Not enough to render them invisible, but enough to create a disorienting effect when tracking them with the naked eye. Their heads were elongated with no visible ears and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. The eyes blinked independently of each other, creating an unsettling pattern that made it difficult to maintain focus on their faces. Where mouths should have been, they had what looked like vertical slits that occasionally pulsed. I counted 7 of them. They carried devices that could only be weapons, sleek, organic-looking tools that seemed to flow from their 3-fingered hands. The devices weren't held so much as integrated, as if the boundary between alien and technology was blurred. Dr. Morgan whispered into her recording device, bipedal, approximately 7 feet tall, demonstrating environmental adaptation capabilities through pigmentation shifts. Weapon technology appears integrated with their biology. No visible respiratory system. Movement suggests adaptation to gravity stronger than their native conditions. They're scouting, Rodriguez noted, his trained eye picking up on their movement patterns. Look at the way they're moving. They're establishing a perimeter. He was right. The aliens were methodically expanding outward from their craft, placing small devices at regular intervals that emitted a faint bluish glow. The devices appeared to sink partially into the ground once placed, as if bonding with the terrain. One alien stopped suddenly, its head swiveling directly toward our position. Its 4 eyes blinked in sequence, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I felt my heart stop. We were nearly half a mile away using state-of-the-art camouflage gear designed to defeat thermal imaging and visual detection. There was no way they could... They've spotted us, I said, noticing subtle changes in their movement patterns. The aliens had ceased placing devices and were now converging slowly, their attention fixed in our direction. They're converging, but slowly. I don't think they consider us an immediate threat. Davis readied his weapon, a motion so subtle only years of working together allowed me to notice it. Options. We maintain position, I replied. They know something's here, but they might not know what. Let's see what they do. We watched as the aliens communicated through what appeared to be color patterns, rippling across their skin, fluorescent blues and greens pulsing in complex arrangements. They spread out, approaching our position from multiple angles with their weapon appendages held in neutral positions. Morgan relayed our situation back to base through our secure communication system. Colonel Reynolds' response was immediate. Attempt communication. Show yourselves, but maintain distance and defensive posture. First contact protocols are in effect. They want us to initiate contact, I explained to the team. We go slow, we stay visible, and we keep our distance. We emerged from our hiding spot, weapons lowered but ready. The aliens paused, their 4 eyes blinking in an unsynchronized pattern that created an almost hypnotic effect. The one that appeared to lead them, distinguished by more elaborate patterns rippling across its skin, raised a device that emitted a soft humming sound. We represent Earth, Dr. Morgan said clearly, her voice remarkably steady, despite the extraordinary circumstances. We mean you no harm and welcome peaceful contact. The humming intensified, and suddenly the leader's vertical mouth slit parted. What emerged wasn't a voice, but a series of clicks and whistles that varied in pitch and rhythm. The device in its hand glowed brighter, and then, impossibly, words formed in the air between us, not spoken, but somehow projected, as if written in light. Your world intersects our exploration path. We study before determining status. Dr. Morgan looked pale but continued. Following the first contact protocol she had helped develop but never expected to use. What do you wish to study? We can provide information about our world and our species. Defense capabilities, weapons efficiency, threat assessment. The directness of the response sent a chill through our group. These weren't peaceful explorers seeking cultural exchange. They were conducting military reconnaissance. We are a peaceful species, Morgan continued, "but we defend ourselves when necessary. May we ask the purpose of your visit to our world?" The alien leader's skin rippled with patterns of deep blue and violet. The translation appeared again. Cataloguing, resource survey, civilization assessment. "Are there others like you visiting our world?" Rodriguez asked, his training in interrogation coming to the fore. The alien's color patterns shifted to something resembling amusement, though I couldn't explain how I recognized it as such. "We are sufficient for preliminary survey. Full contact protocol determined by initial findings." A cold realization settled over me. This wasn't a chance encounter. It was a scouting mission, possibly preceding something larger. I exchanged glances with Davis, who nodded slightly. He'd reached the same conclusion. We maintained this tense first contact for nearly an hour, exchanging basic information while the aliens studied our equipment with unsettling intensity. They seemed particularly interested in our weapons, their four eyes focusing on every detail of design and carrying methods. As night fell, we established a base camp at a safe distance, maintaining visual contact with the alien craft. Reinforcements arrived silently throughout the night. Special forces teams, scientific personnel, and specialized equipment. By dawn, we had a substantial presence established, though still tiny compared to what would be deployed for a conventional military operation. Secrecy remained paramount. No one outside our chain of command knew what was happening in this remote canyon. Colonel Reynolds arrived with the dawn, accompanied by more scientists and military personnel. The military presence clearly intrigued our visitors, who watched with their disconcerting four-eyed gaze as our troops established a perimeter around their ship. Their own perimeter of devices continued to emit that faint blue glow, creating two concentric circles of human and alien technology, separated by an unspoken boundary that neither side crossed. "They want to see our weapons," I told Reynolds, relaying our earlier conversation as we stood near our command tent. "Their entire focus seems to be on assessing our combat capabilities." Reynolds nodded grimly, his weathered face showing the strain of a sleepless night. "Then we'll show them. Controlled demonstration only. Basic capabilities, nothing experimental." "Sir, with respect, they're clearly conducting military reconnaissance," Davis interjected. "Showing them our capabilities might not be in our best interest." Reynolds regarded him steadily. "They've already demonstrated technology far beyond ours, just by arriving here. If they wanted to attack, they could have done so already. No, this is about intelligence gathering. On both sides. We need to learn about them as much as they need to learn about us." A makeshift firing range was established, a safe distance from both our camp and their ship. Standard military protocol would have forbidden such a display, but nothing about this situation was standard. Intelligence needed to assess their reactions, and the aliens seemed fixated on our armaments. The demonstration began mid-morning under a cloudless sky. First came small arms, standard-issue rifles and sidearms. Our soldiers hit targets with respectable accuracy at varying distances. The aliens watched impassively, their skin occasionally rippling with color patterns our scientists were desperately trying to interpret. When we moved to heavier weapons, a .50 caliber machine gun that tore through armored plates at 500 yards, I noticed the first real reaction from them. A subtle color change swept through the group, a ripple of communication between them that our translation devices couldn't decipher. Dr. Morgan, standing beside me, whispered, "They're evaluating us, like scientists studying primitive organisms." The demonstration continued with progressively more advanced systems, anti-tank weapons, portable missile launchers, even a demonstration of a tactical drone strike on a remote target. Each display seemed to elicit more complex color patterns among the aliens, but their expressions, if you could call them that, remained unreadable. Then they showed us their capabilities. One alien stepped forward, its movements fluid and precise. It raised what looked like a twisted piece of coral that had somehow been metallized. There was no visible trigger, no apparent aiming mechanism, no sign of ammunition or power source. It simply pointed the device at a distant boulder nearly a mile away. The rock didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It simply ceased to exist, collapsing into itself with a sound like air being sucked through a straw. Where solid stone had stood moments before, nothing remained but a perfect hemispherical depression in the ground. I felt my mouth go dry. Around me, soldiers instinctively tightened their grips on their suddenly inadequate weapons. The alien lowered its device and turned to face us. Its leader made a series of gestures accompanied by complex skin color changes, and the translation device projected primitive targeting, inefficient kinetic delivery, low threat assessment. Reynolds maintained his composure admirably, though I could see the tension in his jaw. We have many systems we haven't demonstrated. Unnecessary, basic principles evident. Challenge proposed for further study. The aliens, through their translation device, proposed what could only be described as a shooting competition. They would select targets and representatives from both sides would attempt to hit them. Scientific exchange disguised as a contest, Dr. Morgan suggested, though the military personnel recognized it for what it truly was, a direct assessment of our combat effectiveness. Reynolds selected me as our representative after a brief consultation with his staff. You're our best shot, Cooper, but more importantly, you understand angles better than anyone here. They're toying with us, I whispered as we walked to the designated area, my specialized rifle feeling suddenly inadequate in my hands. Probably, he agreed, his voice low enough that only I could hear. But we need to understand their capabilities better, and they seem fixated on this comparison. Your job isn't to win, it's to observe and report everything you can about their weapons technology. Reynolds paused, then added, And Cooper, don't show them everything you can do, not yet. I understood the implication immediately. This wasn't about pride or even demonstration. It was about strategic information control. Sometimes letting your opponent underestimate you is the greatest advantage. The competition began at noon, with the sun directly overhead, eliminating shadows that might complicate shooting. The aliens set up targets at various distances, some so far away they appeared as mere specks, even through my scope. The targets themselves were strange, metallic plates of varying thickness and composition, some of which seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. My alien counterpart went first, stepping forward with that unsettling fluid grace. It raised its coral-like weapon, which pulsed within a light as it was aimed. There was no recoil, no visible projectile, no sound of discharge. Each target, metal plates of varying thickness, disappeared with that same disturbing implosion effect. The alien didn't take time to aim, didn't adjust for wind or distance. It simply pointed and eliminated. Perfect accuracy, zero hesitation. Then came my turn. I raised my specialized rifle, a prototype that represented the pinnacle of human ballistic technology. The familiar weight against my shoulder should have been reassuring, but after witnessing the alien's demonstration, it felt like bringing a stone axe to a gunfight. I took aim at the first target, adjusted for wind, and fired. I missed, deliberately. The bullet struck a rock formation 30 meters to the left of the target. The alien's skin rippled with what Dr. Morgan later described as their equivalent of laughter, patches of yellow and orange pulsing in synchronized patterns. My second shot also missed, this time striking the ground about 20 meters short of the second target. More alien amusement followed, the color patterns intensifying and spreading among them like a visual chorus of mockery. By my fifth consecutive miss, Reynolds was looking concerned, despite knowing my reputation. The aliens were openly displaying color patterns that our analytical systems interpreted as derision or contempt. Targeting systems Defective or operator incompetent, the translation read, floating in the air between us like a challenge. I smiled slightly, a plan forming. During the hours of observation, I had noticed something about the devices the aliens had placed around their perimeter. Each time they demonstrated their weapons, the devices pulsed in synchronized patterns. Dr. Morgan's instruments had detected energy fluctuations suggesting some kind of field generation, possibly a defense system or energy network that integrated with their weapons. "One more round," I requested, my voice steady. "Different targets." The alien leader made a gesture of acquiescence, its skin rippling with what I interpreted as amused condescension. Its champion stepped forward once more and obliterated the final target with the same effortless precision it had shown throughout the competition. I raised my rifle again, took careful aim at the empty space where the target had been, and deliberately fired into a small outcropping of quartz about 50 meters to the right. The bullet struck exactly where I intended. Not random misses, but precisely calculated shots. The aliens' mocking color displays froze as the bullet hit the quartz, fragmented and sent splinters in a precisely calculated pattern. These fragments struck 7 different rock surfaces at specific angles, causing secondary ricochets. The pattern of bouncing fragments continued, gaining speed and multiplying with each deflection, until they converged simultaneously on 7 different points around the aliens, not hitting them, but hitting the small devices they had placed earlier to establish their perimeter. All 7 devices detonated instantly, creating a perfect circle of disruption around the aliens. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Their weapons suddenly dimmed, the coral-like structures becoming dull and lifeless in their hands. The color patterns on their skin froze in to a uniform grey, and their movements became noticeably less fluid, as if they were suddenly struggling against Earth's gravity. The rippling colors on their skin froze in to a uniform grey as understanding dawned. "We weren't aiming for your targets," I said quietly, lowering my rifle, but keeping it ready. "Humans learned long ago that sometimes the best way to hit something is to aim at something else." During our reconnaissance, while they thought we were merely observing, Dr. Morgan had identified unusual energy patterns around their devices. We theorized they created some kind of field that integrated with their weapons and possibly their biology, maybe even a localized gravity adjustment that allowed them to move so fluidly in Earth's stronger gravitational pull. My specialized training in ricochet shooting wasn't a party trick. It was precisely what we needed to hit multiple targets simultaneously in a pattern their technology couldn't predict or defend against. While they had focused on direct force application, making targets disappear, they had never considered the strategic advantages of indirect approaches. The alien leader's translation device flickered as it struggled to function. The words formed slower than before, with visible distortion, indirect attack strategy, unanticipated, tactical reassessment required. "You are measuring the wrong thing," Reynolds said, stepping forward with controlled confidence. "You were measuring accuracy. We were measuring effectiveness." The atmosphere changed instantly. The alien's skin shifted to deep crimson patterns that our systems couldn't interpret. Their leader made a series of rapid clicks and whistles, the vertical slit in its face pulsing with intensity. The translation came through broken but clear enough. Reassessment required, threat level significant, withdrawal protocol initiated. They retreated to their ship with remarkable speed, gathering their disabled perimeter devices despite their apparent malfunction. No further communication was attempted. The oval opening reappeared in the side of their craft, and they disappeared inside with the same fluid grace, though noticeably hampered by whatever effect the destruction of their devices had caused. Within minutes, their craft rose silently into the air, its mercury-like surface rippling more violently than before. It accelerated upward at an impossible rate, vanishing into the afternoon sky with no sonic boom, no exhaust trail, nothing to indicate that something had just broken every known law of physics. The canyon fell silent. For several moments, no one spoke, all eyes fixed on the empty sky, where the alien craft had disappeared. "Did we just start an interstellar war?" Rodriguez finally asked, his usual humor absent. "No," Reynolds replied firmly. "We just demonstrated that humanity isn't as primitive as they thought. There's a difference between aggression and self-respect." We spent the next 3 days analyzing everything we'd learned. The entire canyon was declared a Level 7 restricted zone, with specialists in hazmat suits collecting every scrap of data possible. The small amount of residue left from the alien devices yielded fascinating but incomplete insights into their technology, suggesting biological components integrated with metallic elements in ways our scientists couldn't fully comprehend. Dr. Morgan led the scientific analysis, working without sleep for 48 hours straight. "Their technology isn't just advanced," she explained during one briefing, her eyes red-rimmed but alert. "It's fundamentally different. They don't separate biology from technology the way we do. Their weapons, their ship, even their translation device, they're all partially alive." Military intelligence was already developing new strategies based on what we'd observed. Reynolds established a task force to explore the implications of indirect warfare against technologically superior forces. My ricochet techniques became the subject of intense study, with engineers working to develop weapons specifically designed for complex deflection patterns. But I couldn't shake a growing sense of dread that intensified with each passing day. The aliens had retreated, yes, but not out of fear. They had withdrawn to reassess, to analyze, to prepare. They had come to study us, and we had shown them something they hadn't expected. On the fourth night, I stood alone on the facility roof, a restricted area accessible only to senior personnel. The night was clear, the desert air crisp, and the stars above seemed suddenly alien and threatening. I heard the roof access door open behind me, but didn't turn. Only one other person had clearance to be here. Director Wilson found me there, a silhouette outlined against the lights from the doorway. "You're thinking they weren't alone," she said. It wasn't a question. "They were scouts," I replied, still staring at the distant pinpoints of light. "Their mission was threat assessment, and we just proved we're a threat. Or we proved we're not defenseless," she countered, coming to stand beside me. Her normally perfect posture showed signs of the strain we'd all been under. "Either way, we'll be ready if they return." I wasn't so sure. The aliens had technology that made our most advanced weapons look like stone axes in comparison. We'd surprised them once with an approach they hadn't considered, but surprise only works once. Next time, and I was certain that there would be a next time, they would be prepared for our indirect strategies. "We should be preparing," I said, still staring upward. "Not just the military, humanity. The public deserves to know what's coming. And cause a global panic, destabilize governments, trigger religious crises." Wilson shook her head. "The President and Joint Chiefs have made their decision. This stays compartmentalized for now. Disclosure happens on our timeline, not because we're forced into it." She handed me a folder. New facility, deeper underground, new team, expanded budget. The project has a name now, Precision. Because of the shooting? Because we need to be precise about everything from now on. If they come back, they'll come prepared for conventional and unconventional tactics. We need to be thinking 10 steps ahead. I opened the folder and scanned the contents. Schematics for a massive underground complex built into a mountain range in Colorado, personnel files for dozens of specialists I'd never heard of, and weapon designs that pushed the boundaries of current technology. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow. The new facility is already operational. This location is being decommissioned as we speak." Wilson turned to leave, then paused. "Cooper? What you did out there showing restraint until the right moment, it saved lives. Maybe all our lives." After she left, I took one last look at the stars before following her inside. Somewhere up there, a report was being delivered about a supposedly primitive species that understood something fundamental about combat that even their advanced civilization had forgotten. Sometimes you win, not by hitting what you aim at, but by aiming at what others don't see. The real question was what would happen when they returned, and I had no doubt they would return. The next morning, we boarded unmarked helicopters for the flight to Colorado. As we lifted off, I watched Facility 87 shrinking beneath us, already being systematically dismantled to hide our presence. Davis sat beside me, his expression unreadable. "Think they'll come back with friends?" he asked quietly. "Wouldn't you?" I replied. He nodded grimly. "What's your take on the new facility?" "It's not just about defense," I said, reviewing the schematics in my mind. "The weapon systems they're developing, the satellite network, they're thinking bigger than just repelling another scout ship." "They should be," Davis agreed. "Those things could have wiped us out if they wanted to. Next time, they might not be so curious." The flight to Colorado took 3 hours, during which I reviewed everything we knew about the aliens' technology. Their weapons defied conventional physics, not firing projectiles or energy beams, but somehow altering the fundamental structure of their targets. Their craft moved without apparent propulsion systems. Their translation technology created physical manifestations of language, without visible mechanical components. Yet, they had weaknesses. Their perimeter devices had been surprisingly vulnerable to physical damage. Their weapons seemed to require some kind of support network to function at full capacity. And most importantly, they thought linearly, direct application of force to target. They hadn't considered the strategic possibilities of indirect approaches. We landed at a seemingly abandoned mining facility tucked into the side of a mountain. Armed guards escorted us through a series of security checkpoints into an elevator that descended deep into the earth. The doors opened to reveal a facility at least 5 times larger than our previous base, humming with activity. "Welcome to Precision," Colonel Reynolds said, meeting us as we stepped out. "You'll be briefed on your new responsibilities in 1 hour. Until then, get settled in your quarters and prepare for a long-term assignment." My new quarters were Spartan but comfortable. A bed, desk, small bathroom, and a window that displayed a live video feed from the mountain surface, creating the illusion of an outside view. I unpacked my few belongings, noting that my specialized weapons had already been delivered and secured in the armory. The briefing took place in a massive conference room filled with military personnel, scientists and government officials I didn't recognize. Director Wilson stood at the head of the table, her composure fully restored. "What you experienced in Nevada was humanity's first confirmed contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence," she began without preamble. "Based on their technology and behavior, we've designated them as Species Alpha. Our analysis indicates they represent an advanced civilization with interstellar travel capabilities and weapons technology approximately 2 centuries beyond our current development." She activated a holographic display showing the alien craft and its occupants. Their biology suggests adaptation to lower gravity environments and possibly different atmospheric conditions than Earth. Their technology appears to integrate biological components in ways we don't fully understand. Their weapons utilize principles that our physicists are still struggling to explain, possibly involving matter-energy conversion at the subatomic level. Reynolds took over, bringing up tactical displays. They came to assess our threat level. Thanks to Specialist Cooper's demonstration, they now consider us more dangerous than they initially believed. This buys us time, but also places us on their radar as a species of interest. Or concern, someone added from across the table. Reynolds nodded. "Exactly. Which is why Project Precision has been established with 3 primary objectives. First, to develop defensive capabilities against their technology. Second, to advance our understanding of their biology and psychology. And third, to prepare contingency plans for full-scale contact, whether peaceful or hostile. Director Wilson concluded the briefing. Each of you has been selected for specific skills and knowledge. You represent the best humanity has to offer. Over the coming months, you will be divided into specialized teams focusing on different aspects of the alien technology and biology. Your work here remains classified at the highest level. As far as the outside world is concerned, you've been reassigned to various conventional projects. As people began to disperse to their assignments, Dr. Morgan approached me. "Cooper, I need your help with something." She led me to her new laboratory, a vast space filled with equipment I didn't recognize. In a sealed containment unit sat a fragment of one of the alien devices, no larger than a coin, but emanating a faint bluish glow despite being disconnected from its power source. "We've been analyzing this fragment since the encounter," she explained, bringing up detailed scans on her computer. "It's not just technology, it's partially organic. And it's still active, still trying to function, despite being separated from its network." "Is that dangerous?" I asked, eyeing the fragment warily. "Not in its current state. But what's fascinating is how it responds to different stimuli." She pressed a button and a laser beam struck the fragment. It pulsed briefly, then returned to its steady glow. "Direct energy has minimal effect, but watch this." She activated a complex apparatus that fired microscopic particles in an intricate pattern around the fragment, not touching it directly. The fragment's glow intensified dramatically. "It's more responsive to indirect interactions, complex patterns of energy or matter that approach it from multiple angles simultaneously." Morgan looked at me intently. "Just like your shooting technique, there's something about indirect approaches that their technology isn't designed to handle." "You're suggesting their entire technological philosophy is based on direct force application," I said, understanding dawning. "They never developed the concept of ricochet or deflection. Because they never needed to. Their weapons are so powerful that indirect approaches seemed unnecessary." "Exactly. It's a cultural blind spot, not a technological one. And it might be our greatest advantage." Over the next 6 months, Project Precision expanded rapidly. Additional personnel arrived weekly, specialists in fields I'd never heard of, military strategists from every branch of service, scientists whose research had been too theoretical or radical for conventional applications. The facility grew to accommodate them, with new levels and sections being constantly added. My role evolved from simply being a specialized marksman to heading a tactical development team focused on indirect warfare techniques. We designed weapons specifically for complex ricochet patterns, developed training programs to teach others my techniques, and worked closely with the science division to understand how these approaches might be effective against alien technology. Dr. Morgan's team made breakthrough after breakthrough analyzing the alien fragments. They discovered that the devices operated on principles that integrated quantum effects with biological processes, not mechanical computers, but living systems that processed information in ways we were only beginning to understand. "They don't think like us," she explained during one joint briefing. "Their technology suggests a species that evolved with a fundamentally different relationship to their environment. Where we develop tools as extensions of ourselves, they develop themselves as extensions of their tools. The line between biology and technology is meaningless to them." Colonel Reynolds' strategic planning became increasingly sophisticated as we learned more. "If they return, they'll come prepared for our indirect approach," he noted. "So we need to be thinking beyond that, developing strategies that anticipate their adaptations to our adaptations." Director Wilson coordinated everything, ensuring that our discoveries were quietly filtered into mainstream research and development programs without revealing their true source. Next generation, weapon systems, advanced materials research, new approaches to computing, all influenced by what we'd learned from the alien encounter, all disguised as natural, technological evolution. 9 months after the encounter, our early warning system detected an anomaly at the edge of our solar system. Energy signatures similar to those of the scout ship, but vastly larger. Multiple contacts, announced the monitoring officer, his voice tense but controlled. 7 distinct signatures approaching from beyond Neptune's orbit. Current velocity suggests arrival in approximately 72 hours. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Not one ship, but 7. A fleet. Director Wilson was the first to speak. Activate Protocol Umbra. All personnel to battle stations. Notify the President and Joint Chiefs immediately. Protocol Umbra was the contingency plan we'd spent months developing. The global response to a potential alien fleet. Within hours, specially trained military units around the world were quietly mobilizing. Experimental defense systems, disguised as satellite upgrades or weather monitoring stations, were brought online. Civilian communications networks were subtly hardened against potential disruption, all without public knowledge or panic. I stood in the command center watching as 7 distinct signals approached our planet. The room buzzed with controlled tension, hundreds of specialists working with practiced precision, despite the unprecedented nature of the threat. "What do we know about the vessels?" I asked Reynolds, who was coordinating with military commands worldwide. "Much larger than the scout ship," he replied, not looking up from his console. "Different configuration too, not just scaled up versions of what we saw. These appear to be specialized for different functions, and they're making no attempt to hide their approach." That last detail sent a chill through me. The scout had been stealthy, cautious. This fleet was announcing its presence, a demonstration of confidence or perhaps a psychological tactic. Director Wilson joined us, her face grave but composed. "The President has authorized full deployment of the Precision Protocol. All experimental defensive systems are being brought online. Designated military units worldwide are moving to positions. The public cover story is an international military exercise." "Will that hold?" I asked, thinking of the panic that would ensue if people knew the truth. "It has to," she replied simply, "at least until we know their intentions." Dr. Morgan approached, tablet in hand. "We've completed analysis of their approach vector and velocity changes. They're demonstrating capabilities far beyond the scout vessel, making course corrections that would tear conventional spacecraft apart. The energy signatures suggest they're using the same technology as the scout, but on a vastly larger scale." "Weapons?" Reynolds asked. "If they're proportional to their size compared to the scout ship." Morgan shook her head. "We could be looking at a city killer capacity per vessel." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of preparation and planning. Sleep came in short, restless bursts between briefings and strategy sessions. Every sensor we had, from ground-based telescopes to our most advanced satellite arrays, was focused on the approaching fleet. 24 hours before their projected arrival, they changed formation. 6 of the ships spread into a hexagonal pattern, while the 7th, the largest, took position at the center. "It's a standard escort formation," Reynolds explained during an emergency briefing. "The central vessel is likely their command ship." "Or it contains whatever they consider leadership," Dr. Morgan corrected. "We shouldn't project human military structures onto them." As the alien fleet entered Earth orbit, the world held its breath, or rather the small percentage of humanity aware of what was happening did. For most people, it was just another day, their news feeds filled with reports about an international military exercise causing unusual aircraft activity. The vessels took position in geosynchronous orbit directly above our facility in Colorado. Their message was clear. They knew exactly where we were. "They're scanning us," announced a technician monitoring our defensive systems. "Multiple frequencies, some we can't even classify. They're looking at everything: electromagnetic, gravitational, even patterns we don't have names for yet." Director Wilson made the call we'd been preparing for. "Initiate contact protocol. Let's not wait for them to make the first move this time." Our most advanced communication array directed a carefully crafted message toward the alien fleet, a simplified version of the mathematical communication developed by our linguistics team, designed to establish basic parameters for interaction. For 3 tense hours, there was no response. The alien vessels maintained their perfect hexagonal formation, absolutely motionless relative to Earth's surface, their hulls rippling occasionally like the scout ships had done. Then, without warning, a section of the largest vessel's hull morphed, creating what appeared to be a focused transmission array aimed directly at our facility. Data flooded our systems, not an attack, but a communication so dense with information that our computers struggled to process it. "It's a response," Dr. Morgan said, her eyes wide as she reviewed the incoming data. "But it's everything. They're not just replying to our message, they're sending what appears to be their entire database on human civilization. They've been watching us for much longer than we realized." The images that began appearing on our screens confirmed her assessment. Detailed scans of major cities, intercepted communications going back decades, biological analyses of humans from different regions, assessments of our technology, our social structures, our conflicts. They had been studying us thoroughly, methodically, for what appeared to be generations. "They know us better than we know ourselves," someone whispered. The final data packet contained a simple message in multiple human languages. "Demonstration required. Surface meeting. Designated representative only." Accompanying the message were coordinates for a meeting point, a flat, empty stretch of desert 30 miles from our facility. "It's you, Cooper," Reynolds said after a brief consultation with Director Wilson. "You're the designated representative. You're the one who showed them we weren't as primitive as they thought. They want to deal with you directly." "That's an absurd risk," I protested. "We have diplomats, officials." "This isn't about diplomacy," Wilson interrupted. They specifically referenced the indirect strategy demonstrator. That's you. They're not interested in talking to our leaders. They want to evaluate the human who outthought them. The implications were staggering. An advanced alien civilization had sent a fleet to Earth specifically because of what I had demonstrated with a single ricochet shot. Preparation for the meeting was meticulous. I would wear a specialized suit developed based on what we'd learned from the scout encounter, designed to protect against a range of potential environmental hazards, while containing advanced sensor systems to gather as much data as possible. "You won't be armed," Reynolds explained. "At least not conventionally. The suit itself incorporates some defensive capabilities, but nothing that would register as a weapon on their scans." Dr. Morgan personally calibrated the suit's systems. "Remember everything we've learned about them," she said, her usually clinical demeanor showing cracks of concern. "They communicate as much through color patterns as through words. Watch for rapid shifts. Those indicate agitation or possibly deception." "How do I communicate back?" I asked. "I can't exactly change colors." "The suit has limited mimicry capabilities. It can produce basic patterns that our research suggests indicate peaceful intent. Beyond that, you'll have to rely on the translation system they used before." As dawn broke over the desert, I was transported to the designated coordinates by an unmarked helicopter. The landing zone had been prepared with minimal equipment, just enough to monitor my vital signs and maintain communication. "Remember," Director Wilson said through my earpiece as the helicopter lifted off, leaving me alone on the desert floor. "We don't need a victory here, we need information. understand what they want, why they've come in force, and what they intend. I stood alone as the helicopter diminished to a speck in the distance. The morning air was cool, but I could already feel the promise of the desert heat to come. The suit regulated my temperature perfectly. One small comfort in an utterly uncomfortable situation. The sky above was clear blue, showing no sign of the 7 massive vessels I knew were there, hidden by distance and perhaps deliberate cloaking. I'd expected them to send down a smaller craft, similar to how human delegations might land a helicopter rather than an aircraft carrier for a meeting. I was wrong. The largest vessel, the one we had designated as their command ship, simply appeared overhead. No descent, no atmospheric disturbance, no sound. One moment there was empty sky, and the next, a massive shape hung there, its mercury-like surface rippling in complex patterns that hurt my eyes to follow. A section of the hull morphed, creating an opening similar to what we had seen with the scout ship, but vastly larger. From this opening emerged what I can only describe as a platform, a flat, circular area that descended smoothly toward me, with no visible means of propulsion. The platform held 3 aliens. 2 matched the general appearance of those from the scout ship, though their skin displayed more elaborate colour patterns. The third was different, larger, with more complex limb structures and a head featuring not 4 but 6 eyes arranged in an asymmetrical pattern that created an oddly hypnotic effect when they blinked in sequence. The platform stopped about 10 feet from where I stood, hovering silently a few inches above the desert floor. None of the aliens moved. I recalled Dr. Morgan's coaching and maintained a neutral stance, hands visible at my sides, waiting for them to initiate the interaction. The largest alien's skin rippled with colours I hadn't seen before, deep purples and blues that seemed to shimmer with internal light. A device similar to the translation tool from the first encounter floated forward, positioning itself between us. The indirect strategist appeared in glowing text. Unexpected capability demonstrated. Explanation required. I chose my words carefully, aware that this conversation was being transmitted back to the facility and likely to the highest levels of government. I am James Cooper. I represent humanity in this meeting. We demonstrated one small aspect of human tactical thinking during our previous encounter. We wish to understand why this has prompted such significant attention from your civilization. The alien's 6 eyes blinked in that disorienting sequence, and its colour patterns shifted to something more complex, bands of colour moving in contradictory directions across its skin. Primitive species with advanced concept. Contradiction requires investigation. Threat assessment incomplete. I noted their continued focus on threat assessment. Our approach was defensive, not aggressive. We demonstrated capability only after your scout analysed our weapons. Distinction irrelevant. Capability exists. Potential threat exists. Now we were getting somewhere. Is that why you've returned with a fleet? Because you consider us a threat? The alien's colours pulsed rapidly, and all 6 eyes fixed on me simultaneously, an effect so disconcerting that I had to consciously prevent myself from stepping back. Correction, you are not yet a threat, you are a potential threat. Difference, significant. The translation continued. Evolved species follow predictable development patterns. Technology progresses through standard sequences. Weapons evolve from direct to energy-based. Your species demonstrates sequence violation. Indirect strategy at primitive development stage indicates abnormal evolution path. I was beginning to understand. Their civilization had developed in a linear, predictable fashion. Direct application of force evolving into increasingly efficient methods of applying that force. They had never needed to develop indirect strategies because their direct ones were so overwhelmingly effective. Our demonstration of ricochet shooting, a technique born of human limitation and adaptation, represented something they couldn't categorize within their understanding of civilization development. Different species evolve different solutions based on their environments and limitations, I explained. Humans developed indirect strategies precisely because we lack the capability for overwhelming direct force. It's an adaptation, not an anomaly. The aliens' colors shifted again, this time to patterns that seem more ordered, less chaotic. Adaptation sequence abnormal. Primitive technology with advanced strategic concepts creates unpredictable development trajectory. Then came the statement that chilled me to my core. Unpredictable species cannot be classified. Unclassified species cannot be incorporated. Incorporated into what? I asked, though I suspected the answer. The network. All sentient species ultimately join or are eliminated. Classification determines method of incorporation. There it was, the reason for their interest, for the fleet, for everything. They weren't just explorers or conquerors. They were collectors, incorporating other species into some kind of network or collective, and their decision about how to incorporate a species, peacefully or forcibly, depended on how they classified that species' development trajectory. And you can't classify us because we demonstrated an unexpected capability, I concluded. Correct. Unexpected capability indicates potential for future unexpected capabilities. Risk factors cannot be calculated. Standard incorporation protocols insufficient. I thought quickly, aware that this conversation might determine humanity's fate. That's exactly why you should consider peaceful incorporation. Our different evolution path means we could contribute unique perspectives to your network. Diversity of approach strengthens the whole. The aliens seemed to consider this, its color patterns shifting through sequences I couldn't interpret. The two smaller aliens also displayed changing patterns, suggesting some form of silent communication between them. Alternative classification proposed, the translation finally read. New category. Strategic innovators. Requires extended observation period. Minimum 1 planetary revolution cycle. You want to observe us for a year before deciding, I interpreted. Correct. Observation will be comprehensive. All aspects of human civilization will be evaluated. Interference will be minimal but present. What kind of interference? I asked, alarm growing. Strategic challenge scenarios. Response analysis required. Peaceful scenarios and conflict scenarios both necessary for complete assessment. They were proposing to test us, to create situations that would reveal more about human problem solving and strategic thinking. The implications were staggering. An advanced alien civilization would be staging scenarios across our planet for the next year, evaluating our responses to determine our ultimate fate. Your presence and activities could cause panic among our population, I said. Most humans are unaware of your existence. Awareness irrelevant to assessment. Scenarios will be designed to minimize general detection. Primary interaction with designated observation points. That explained their focus on our facility. They intended to work primarily through the channels already established, the military and scientific installations that were aware of their existence. And after this observation period, I asked, what then? Classification finalized, incorporation method determined, either cooperative integration or supervised restructuring. The euphemisms weren't lost on me. Cooperative integration sounded voluntary. Supervised restructuring sounded like conquest by another name. I will convey your proposal to our leaders, I said, careful not to make commitments I had no authority to make. We request ongoing communication channels to address questions or concerns during the observation period. Granted, primary communication node established at this facility. Secondary nodes will be designated as needed. The largest alien made a gesture with its multiple jointed limbs, and the translation device projected one final message. Observation begins. Prepare your species for evaluation. Indirect strategist. Your demonstration created this opportunity. Your continuing innovation may determine your species' survival. The platform began to rise, taking the three aliens back toward their vessel. As they ascended, the largest one's skin displayed one final color pattern, a swirling mixture of deep blue and gold that covered its entire visible surface. Dr. Morgan's voice came through my earpiece, tense with excitement. "Cooper, our system just translated that final color display. It's not a message, it's an emotion. Our best interpretation is something like respect mingled with concern. They respect what you showed them, but they're worried about what else we might be capable of." As the platform disappeared into the massive vessel, I remained standing alone in the desert, the weight of what had just transpired settling over me. Humanity had 1 year to prove itself worthy of cooperative integration rather than supervised restructuring. 1 year of tests and challenges designed by beings who could make mountains disappear with a gesture. And somehow I was now the designated point of contact, the indirect strategist who had inadvertently triggered this whole situation with a single ricochet shot. The helicopter returned to retrieve me, its sound breaking the eerie silence that had fallen over the desert. As I climbed aboard, I looked up at the empty sky where the alien vessel had been. Invisible now, but still there, watching. "How bad is it?" Reynolds asked as soon as I was seated. "It's complicated," I replied. "They're not here to conquer us, at least not immediately. They're here to test us." "Test us how?" "They're going to create scenarios, challenges designed to evaluate how we think, how we solve problems. They're especially interested in our capacity for indirect strategies for approaching problems in ways they haven't anticipated." Reynolds processed this information with the calm efficiency I'd come to expect from him. "So, we're being examined like lab rats?" "More like potential recruits," I corrected. "They incorporate other species into some kind of network or collective. How they do that, peacefully or forcibly, depends on how they classify the species. And they can't classify us because we don't fit their normal development patterns." "Because you showed them that trick shot," he said, understanding dawning. "Exactly. They expect species to develop direct force application first, then gradually refine it toward energy weapons. They don't expect a primitive species like us to already understand indirect strategic approaches. It confuses their classification system." As the helicopter approached the facility, I could see unusual activity, new equipment being installed, personnel moving with urgent purpose, vehicles coming and going. The aliens had said they were establishing a primary communication node at our facility, and apparently the process was already underway. Director Wilson met us on the landing pad, her face showing the strain of sleepless nights, but her eyes alert and focused. We received the full transmission. The President and Joint Chiefs have been briefed. We're preparing for the observation period. "What does that mean exactly?" I asked as we walked briskly toward the command center. "It means we're setting up specialized response teams worldwide. People trained to recognize and react to these strategic challenge scenarios they mentioned. It means establishing protocols for information sharing between nations that normally don't share anything. And it means preparing contingency plans for both outcomes they outlined." The command center had been transformed in my absence. New displays showed global maps with highlighted regions, unusual energy signatures, and data streams I didn't recognize. Additional personnel filled workstations that hadn't existed the day before. "We're tracking unusual phenomena worldwide," Reynolds explained, gesturing to the displays. "Weather anomalies, electromagnetic disturbances, unexplained structural failures, anything that might represent the beginning of their tests." Dr. Morgan joined us. The team expanded significantly, with new faces I didn't recognize. We've already identified 3 potential scenarios in progress. A bridge collapse in Southeast Asia with impossible structural characteristics, a communication blackout affecting a specific pattern of cities in Europe, and unusual marine life behaviour along the eastern seaboard. They're not wasting any time, I remarked. They have 1 planetary year to determine our fate, Wilson replied grimly. I wouldn't waste time either. The next 6 months saw a rapid evolution of both the alien challenges and our responses to them. The scenarios began simply, isolated incidents designed to test basic problem solving and cooperation. A small town's water supply mysteriously contaminated with an unknown substance that conventional treatments couldn't remove. A localized gravitational anomaly affecting air traffic over the Pacific. Electronic systems failing in patterns that created logistics nightmares. Each scenario required a different approach, often involving coordination between multiple specialties and organizations that normally didn't work together. The aliens were testing not just our technical capabilities, but our ability to collaborate under pressure. My role evolved from point of contact to strategic advisor. My background in indirect approaches gave me insight into how to tackle problems that defied conventional solutions. I found myself traveling worldwide, consulting with specialized teams as they responded to increasingly complex challenges. They're learning from our responses, I told Director Wilson during a rare moment of downtime. Each new scenario incorporates elements designed to counter approaches that worked previously. That's what concerns me, she replied. They're not just testing us, they're forcing us to evolve our problem-solving capabilities at an accelerated rate. The question is, toward what end? Toward classification, I reminded her. They need to determine whether we're compatible with their network or if we represent a potential threat. As the challenges increased in complexity, so did the coordination required to address them. Nations that had been historical enemies found themselves sharing information and resources to combat phenomena that recognized no borders or political ideologies. Scientists who had guarded their research jealously now published findings immediately to help colleagues worldwide understand what we were facing. Humanity was changing in response to the alien observation, becoming more cooperative, more innovative, more united against the implicit external threat. I couldn't help wondering if that was part of the test as well. 9 months into the observation period, the pattern of challenges shifted dramatically. Instead of isolated incidents requiring specific responses, we began facing coordinated scenarios that affected multiple systems simultaneously. A power grid failure that coincided with communication disruptions and transportation anomalies. Atmospheric disturbances that created weather patterns that affected agriculture, shipping, and urban infrastructure all at once. These compound challenges required not just cooperation but genuine innovation, new ways of thinking about interconnected systems and cascading effects. My team at Precision found itself working around the clock, developing analytical tools to identify patterns and predict where the next disruption might occur. They're testing our capacity for systems thinking, Dr. Morgan observed during one particularly intense strategy session. Not just how we solve individual problems, but how we understand the relationships between problems. It's more than that, I replied, studying the global situation map. Look at the pattern of these disruptions. They're creating conditions that force us to choose between competing priorities. Power restoration versus communication systems, food distribution versus medical care. They're testing our values, Reynolds concluded, seeing what we prioritize when we can't address everything at once. The alien communication node at our facility remained largely silent during this period, providing no guidance or feedback on our responses. But occasionally, when a particularly innovative solution was implemented, the node would emit a burst of data, complex color patterns that our translation systems interpreted as expressions of surprise or interest. During the final month of the observation period, the challenges reached their peak intensity. Massive environmental disruptions, technological failures that affected critical infrastructure globally, phenomena that defied our understanding of physics and biology. Earth was being subjected to a comprehensive stress test of its systems and its inhabitants' responses. Human innovation rose to meet these challenges in ways that continually surprise me. A team in Japan developed an algorithm that could predict and compensate for the gravitational anomalies affecting transportation systems. Scientists in Brazil found a way to neutralize the mysterious contaminants appearing in water supplies worldwide. Engineers in Kenya created a distributed power system that could maintain critical services even when conventional grids failed. Each success was met with new, more complex challenges, as if the aliens were constantly raising the bar just beyond our reach, forcing us to stretch, to grow, to innovate under pressure. 1 week before the end of the observation period, I was summoned to the alien communication node. The message was brief and direct. Final assessment preparation. Designated representative required. The facility had changed dramatically over the year. What had once been a secret military installation was now a global coordination center, with representatives from dozens of nations working side by side. The alien node occupied what had been the main hangar, a massive space now filled with technology that defied conventional description, pulsing with energies that made the air itself feel charged. Director Wilson met me at the security checkpoint leading to the node. Her appearance had changed as much as the facility, her formerly perfect appearance now replaced by the practical efficiency of someone who had been working without pause for months. The grey in her hair had spread and new lines marked her face, but her eyes remained as sharp and determined as ever. "They've called in representatives from all major nations," she explained as we walked. "Whatever this final assessment involves, they want witnesses from across human civilization." The node's interior glowed with shifting patterns of light that mirrored the color communications of the aliens themselves. In the center stood a platform similar to the one that had descended from their ship during our first formal meeting, but larger and more complex in structure. Representatives from world governments, military organizations, and scientific institutions gathered in a circle around this platform, an unprecedented assembly of human leadership united by a year of shared challenges. The platform illuminated, and 3 aliens materialized upon it, the same trio I had met in the desert a year earlier. The largest one, with its 6 eyes and complex limb structure, stepped forward. Its skin displayed patterns I had learned to recognize as formal or ceremonial, rigid geometries in deep blue and gold. The translation device activated, projecting words that everyone present could read in their native language. Observation period concluded, assessment complete, classification determined. A tense silence fell over the assembled humans. This was the moment that would determine Earth's fate, whether we faced cooperative integration or supervised restructuring. A year of tests, challenges, innovations, and adaptations had led to this single announcement. The alien skin shifted to a new pattern, one I hadn't seen before, a spiraling convergence of colours that seemed to flow both inward and outward simultaneously. Classification strategic innovators confirmed. Subcategory adaptive responders, further subcategory collaborative problem solvers. The translation continued. Human civilization demonstrates unprecedented combination of characteristics, primitive technology with advanced strategic concepts, competitive social structures with capacity for emergency cooperation, individual specialization with collective adaptation. Director Wilson stepped forward. "And what does this classification mean for Earth?" The alien's 6 eyes blinked in that disconcerting sequence. "It means your species will not be incorporated at this time." Murmurs broke out among the assembled representatives, confusion, relief, concern all mingled together. "Explain," Wilson demanded, her voice steady despite the stakes. "Incorporation requires predictability. Your species defies prediction models. Attempt to incorporate would damage network integrity." I stepped forward to stand beside Wilson. "You're saying we're too unpredictable to be safely connected to your network?" "Correct. Your strategic innovations during observation period exceeded all projected parameters. 73% of challenge scenarios resolved through methods not anticipated by test designers." The aliens' colours shifted again, patterns becoming more complex. "Your species will be designated independent development path, no interference, no incorporation, observation will continue at minimum interaction level." Understanding dawned on me. "You're going to leave us alone." "Correct. Resources allocated to potential incorporation will be redirected. Earth designated as Anomaly Study Region." Director Wilson maintained her composure admirably. "And the challenges, the disruptions, will they cease?" "All artificial scenarios terminated. Systems restored to baseline functioning. Observation will be passive only." The alien paused, then added, "Warning, independent development paths contain inherent risks. 71% of unincorporated species self-terminate through technology, misapplication, or resource depletion. Recommendation: apply strategic innovation to internal challenges with same intensity demonstrated during observation period." With that final recommendation, the aliens' forms began to shimmer and fade. The largest one fixed all 6 eyes on me before disappearing completely. The translation device projected one last message: "Indirect strategist, your demonstration created unprecedented outcome. Monitor, appointed for your development. We will be watching." The platform remained, but the aliens were gone. The assembled representatives erupted in discussion, a cacophony of languages and emotions, as the implications of what had just happened sank in. Earth had been spared not because we were worthy of peaceful incorporation, but because we were too unpredictable to be safely absorbed into their network. Our greatest strength had been our unclassifiable nature, our ability to innovate in ways they couldn't anticipate. In the days that followed, the alien fleet departed Earth orbit one by one. By the end of the week, our long-range sensors showed them leaving the solar system entirely. The communication node at our facility remained but fell dormant. Its energies dimmed to a faint glow that our scientists theorized represented the minimal interaction level of passive observation they had mentioned. The world began to return to normal, or rather, to establish a new normal in the wake of a year of extraordinary challenges. The knowledge that we had been tested by an advanced alien civilization remained classified at the highest levels, though rumors and theories abounded in the public sphere. 1 month after the aliens' departure, I stood once again on the roof of the facility, watching the stars. Director Wilson joined me, as she had a year earlier. "They're still out there," she said, "watching us." "But not interfering," I replied, "at least not directly." "Do you think we passed their test or failed it?" I considered this question carefully. "Neither. We confused it. They came looking to classify us according to their understanding of how civilizations develop. We didn't fit their categories, and that saved us. For now. But they were right about the risks we face. Most species on their independent development paths apparently destroy themselves. Without external guidance, the same innovation that saved us from them could doom us through misapplication." Wilson nodded, understanding the implication. "So we need to apply what we learned during their challenges to our own problems. Climate change, resource depletion, political conflicts." "Exactly. We demonstrated extraordinary capability when united against an external threat. The question is whether we can maintain that unity when the threat comes from within. As if on cue, my secure phone vibrated with a message. The facility had been monitoring unusual patterns in global systems. Not alien-induced disruptions, this time, but natural consequences of human activity that had been accelerating for decades. Climate systems approaching tipping points, resource extraction reaching critical thresholds, social tensions escalating in predictable but dangerous ways. They're watching to see if we solve our own problems with the same innovation we showed solving theirs, I said, putting the phone away. That's the real test. Wilson smiled slightly, a rare expression from her. Then we'd better get to work. The observation continues, even if the observers have stepped back. As we descended from the roof, I thought about what the aliens had said about my ricochet shot, the indirect strategy that had confused their classification systems and ultimately led to Earth's unique designation. Sometimes the best approach isn't the most direct or obvious one. Sometimes survival depends on finding the unexpected angle, the ricocheted solution that reaches places direct paths cannot. Humanity had been granted an unexpected reprieve, not because we had proven ourselves worthy of peaceful incorporation, but because we had proven ourselves too unpredictable to be safely absorbed. Our independence came with tremendous responsibility, to direct our innovative capacity towards our own challenges with the same intensity we had shown during the alien observation. The stars above us held countless civilizations, most apparently following predictable development paths that eventually led to incorporation into the vast alien network. Earth now stood as an anomaly, one of the rare worlds permitted to forge its own destiny. As a specialized marksman, I had always known that sometimes the most effective shot is the one that takes the unexpected path. Now humanity faced the ultimate challenge, finding the perfect ricochet solution to our own internal threats under the watchful eyes of beings who had seen countless civilizations rise and fall across the cosmos. They would be watching. And this time the target was our own survival.